If you're like most people today, social media is stealing your time and it's ruining your life. That's what I want to talk about today. I'd like to open up with a quote from Annie Dillard. How we spend our days is, of course, how we spend our lives. Try to remember what you did last year, last February. Most people can't do this. Maybe you get a handful of memories out of any given time period that you try to remember. You had a trip somewhere, you went to someone's wedding, you had a bad week at work, and most of the rest is forgotten. Most of the mundane is forgotten. And often that's because most of our evenings look much the same as the one before it and the one after it. Your life does not turn out how you planned it to turn out. It turns out to be whatever or however you spend your time. For most people right now, those forgotten evenings were filled up by doom scrolling on their phone or being on some sort of a screen. Estimates vary depending on who's counting and how, but most American adults are averaging a little bit over 5 hours a day on their phones, and it's about 7.5 hours on screens in general. Global averages come in a little bit lower, closer to 4.5 hours. But if you use the American figure, you get about 1,900 hours a year on your phone, or 80 days out of a year. Now, numbers like this get quoted so much that they sort of stopped registering in our brains as a big warning signal. So, here's a couple comparisons for you. The State Department's language school budgets around 600 classroom hours to take someone from zero to professional working proficiency in the language of Spanish. So that's 3 times you can learn Spanish from zero to hero with your yearly phone time. 1,900 hours is also roughly what a full-time job amounts to over a year if you subtract holidays and vacations. So you basically have a second job, or you can learn Spanish 3 times. Now, most people watching this or listening to this already know this at some level. We've watched more than a dozen videos about our attention spans are the size of a goldfish and dopamine, and we agree with all of them, and we've changed exactly 0 of our technological habits and practices. So whatever the obstacle is, it's more than definitely not a shortage of information or people explaining that the hours of our days are going somewhere that mostly don't matter. What I'd like to do today is explain how this is happening. I'd like to explain how this machinery works, because I think that most people repeating this weird, detrimental loop don't know. And a cartoon version of this problem, one that you just go, oh, well, 7 hours a day. Oh, wow, I could learn Spanish. It's easy to agree with. You can go, yeah, sure, this is bad. But it's also hard to act on. It's hard to go, okay, well, how do I stop? So let's start with the money, because most of the time, the paper trail explains the rest. I'll use Meta as an example here. Meta's revenue last year was $201 billion, and $196 billion of those dollars came from advertising, which is roughly 98%. You've never paid Instagram anything. So all of that money came from companies buying your attention, which gets priced and sold in units. I'd like to stay away from the conspiracy theory world here, partly because it's wrong and partly because it sort of lets you off the hook as an individual. There's no room full of people plotting against you to siphon off all of your energy and your attention. There's a financial incentive. If revenue for Meta, for example, depends on how much time you spend on their app, how much attention you give their app, that's what their decisions get measured against. They optimize for that metric. That makes sense. That makes sense. None of that requires any intent to harm. If you continue to run that incentive structure over 15 years with really, really good engineers and an incredibly large budget, you get software that is extremely good at siphoning off your attention. and it has no particular reason to be good at anything else. And that's not evil, that's a financial thing. The way that this system works is prediction. It's all prediction models. Your feed or your algorithm is a ranking system trained on your behavior. It sees how long you look at something before you scroll past, what you watched twice, what you finished, what you sent to somebody, what you liked, what you saved, all of this stuff. It doesn't ask what you would like to see because it doesn't need to. Behavior predicts better than stated preference does. Don't do what I say, do as I do. Don't do as I do what I say, whatever. What captures human attention is not a mystery, and it hasn't changed much throughout history. In a nutshell, it's things like conflict, novelty, threat to safety, other people doing better or worse than you, sex, things like this. All of these things were incredibly useful signals when your entire world, your entire environment, your entire perspective on this big blue earth was 45 people. And anything that you could see, you could act on. If you see that guy doing better than you, you go, I'm going to do what he does. Because he got the pig. I'm going to do what he does so I can get the pig. Right? Our evolutionary machinery from those hunter-gatherer times are still here. And it can't tell the difference between a problem that's 40 feet away from you, like, oh my God, that's a tiger and it's going to eat me. That's a tiger and it's going to eat me. I should run that way. Or a problem that is being portrayed to you through a vertical video. And it's on another continent, by the way. Your brain cannot tell the difference. Your algorithm finds these little levers of novelty, of danger, of this guy's doing better than me, this lady's doing better than me, this guy's doing worse than me, all of this stuff, and they throw them at you 100 times an hour. With all of this being said, I'm a man in my 20s, and most of what I know about this topic, I know from firsthand experience, from this viewpoint, and from this position. And when I describe the specific feeling of sort of feeling behind because I'm on some sort of arbitrary internal schedule, I need to be a millionaire by 22, but I'm 22 now, and it's blah, 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 all of this stuff. I'm describing something that I've felt, that the men and the women who DM me on Instagram have felt. They've described this to me, and I don't know how much this generalizes throughout age ranges and generations. The particular pressures that I'm about to describe probably don't apply evenly. That's fine. The comparison problem, for instance, comparing yourself to other people, a lot of kids in my generation, me especially, get caught in this trap. And we compare by what we are measuring with. For most men, it's money, status, physical condition, any of these things, right? Because that's what men normally get measured on. And it's what the feed or the algorithm normally serves us. Women that I've talked to describe the exact same mechanism, but it's running on appearance and social standing and other things like this. So when I say you, roughly, I am talking to somebody like me, or at least that is facing the same challenges as me. And if that is not you, take what is useful and leave everything else. You can discard the rest. That is A-okay. Now, before I go deeply into shitting on the algorithm and how social media is the spawn of Satan and how it's all detrimental, I would like to make the pro-social media argument properly, because it does exist and there's a real case for it. And it goes something like this. Before social media, if you had a rare disease or you were the only person in your country who was deeply infatuated by a particular subject, you were completely alone. You were completely alone. Now, since we have social media, you can find 40 people with that same condition or with that same love for that subject in a week, maybe even a day. That's not a small thing. This has allowed people to connect at a deeper level. There's also a whole group of people who make a living that couldn't before. We have content creators, writers, musicians, people who teach pottery online or whatever. generally, specifically in the arts, the old system had sort of gatekeepers. If you wanted to make a musical record, you had to get a record label deal, and you had to do all of this stuff. And most of the time, that was incredibly slow, incredibly expensive, and they mostly lived in 2 to 3 cities. Removing these gatekeepers has had a lot of people basically unlock their potential to create. I would rather live in that world, the one where people are free to create the art that they would like to create and show it to the world. And if it's really good, the world goes, fuck yeah, do more of that. Do more of that. Rather than a world where a handful of editors decide what gets made and what doesn't. All of that is true, and I will not pretend otherwise. Here's what I notice about the things that I just stated, though. All of them involves a person doing something. They answer messages, they post their work, their art, whatever. They organize meetings, they are looking up techniques that they need to do some specific task. None of them involve a algorithm feeding you content that does not serve you. The upside to social media is the output and the conscious input. The harm is the unconscious input. Now, these are two different sides to this activity, right? You open up your phone and either you know what you want it to do or you don't. If you don't, it's going to take you on a fucking rabbit hole ride, wild goose chase for an hour and a half, and you're going to wake up and you're going to go, holy shit, I don't know what I just did. Or you're going to say, I'd like to learn about Napoleon's something. I'd like to learn about meta ads. I'd like to learn about how to set up a camera. I'd like to learn about whatever it is, specific. You open up your phone, look it up, you learn it, and you're good. And then you go apply it. Amazing. This distinction is pretty important because it explains the main business model of social media. Active use, meaning conscious input to your brain, is super quick. Super, super quick. You pick up your phone and you go, I want this, bing, 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 I have this, awesome. Amazing. Same thing with output. It's super quick. You make a video, you open up the app, you post it, and then you're done. That's the thing. You're done. These companies, since obviously they optimize for attention, they can't build a $200 billion business on people that show up, find the thing that they're looking for, or post their thing, or reply to their messages, and then leave. There must be another version for the financial incentive to make sense. And the one that is ruining our lives is the unconscious input, like I just said. And that's the entire monetary structure of these businesses. They are selling your attention. They are heavily incentivized to, when you go on the Instagram app or the Facebook app or YouTube, they want to keep you there as long as possible. If you're posting, but you got to stay on the app so you can scroll for a little bit, and then maybe you go down a rabbit hole. And again, that's not evil. It's just that one of these things has hundreds of billions of dollars depending on it, and the other doesn't really make the companies any money. It all depends on what the user does. The second issue, and it gets less attention than, the screen time or the unconscious consumption, whatever, is everything on social media, specifically short form content, anything from 30 to 90 seconds, has been passed through a filter that selects for spreading, for virality, rather than being correct or helpful. We've all seen these videos that are completely brain rot, or they're just being controversial to be controversial and they explode. Wow. And then we've all seen the videos that have 4 likes and it's a guy giving you the secrets to life. Or it's a girl telling you exactly how you can have your dream body, or whatever. Here's normally how this goes. Somebody spends years and years and years on a study. They publish it with very, very careful conclusions, and they make sure to say what the data cannot support. and it's a super, super long a study paper or whatever. Then, some sort of university press or institutional press writes about it. Their job as a institution is to sort of take this big analysis, this big data set, and then make it readable to the lay person, I guess. They pick and choose the most striking implications of this study. Seed oils, they raise your blah, 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 whatever. And then they run with that. Then a journalist reads the press release, not the study, and then he makes an article about it. Seed oils, seed oils, And then a podcast host, me, reads the article, seed oils, and then they talk about it for 20 minutes. And then someone clips the 90 seconds where the host sounds the most convicted and the most certain. And all I'm talking about is how seed oils are so bad. I don't talk about what the study doesn't say, because I didn't hear that. I heard what the journalist said, what the university said, and then it's a trickle-down effect, so to speak. And then finally, somebody takes the most viral part of that 90-second clip with literally zero context, and then it explodes. That's the version that reaches you most of the time. Most people are not corrupting or molesting this information on purpose. It just so happens that the different incentives result in different angles, right? The guy who made the study is incentivized to make a good study that is objectively true. The guy who's clipping little 15-second videos from a long video is incentivized to make something have a lot of eyeballs on it. And we said before, things that capture our attention have not changed in a long time. It's danger and sex and doing better than me, all this shit. With that being said, very few people now originate anything. A small number of people do the idea or the conceptual origination, or they do the work and they do the study. And then basically nothing. There's a very, very large number of people that see this person at the very top here that do the idea origination, and then they take it in a million directions. You give them an inch, they spread it to a mile, whatever that saying is. Thomas Sowell has a video about this, and it's called "Intellectuals Cannot Operate at Room Temperature." And it basically just means everybody who's sort of LARPing or faking being an intellectual has just memorized a bunch of things that sound smart. They don't originate any ideas. They just say things that sound smart. Anyway, that's a side tangent. There's a related effect. We can sort of go back to the comparison problem here. Your algorithm shows you finished outcomes, and it normally leaves out the process behind those outcomes. You see Chris Bumstead's physique without the 20-plus years it took to build it. You see some lady's revenue screenshot in her brand new business, but you don't see the 8 failed attempts to start a business. You see the amazing relationship without the 2 years that it was actually pretty rough for those people. You know, in principle, you understand intellectually that a process exists behind each of these outcomes, but you're seeing hundreds of outcomes a day and almost no processes at all. And after long enough of doing that, your sense of what is normal tends to move in the direction of, oh, well, maybe all 14-year-olds do have a mega yacht, and they are making $14 million a day. Huh. Interesting. This accounts for a large portion of the feeling that I was talking about earlier. It's mostly the result of comparing your process against hundreds of hyper-edited outcomes every day, which, won't make you feel that great, if we're being real. Won't make you feel awesome. Now, when I say that social media is ruining your life, there's many ways to sort of nail that down. One of them is that social media tends to make people very angsty, super wound up. And most of the time, they lump two problems in with each other that I would like to separate and explain now. Bear with me here. The first thing that tends to make people anxious on social media is commercial. What I mean by that is that a company needs you to buy something, which means you need to have a problem that their product solves. And if that problem doesn't exist, they make the problem. And again, this is not evil. It's just a financial incentive. Hydration is the clearest, plainest example of this. People, for, I don't know, thousands of years, have been drinking water when they are thirsty. And it worked. Wow. Because normally, thirst is a functioning signal. You go, I'm thirsty, drink water. Now I am no longer thirsty. There's no big revenue. There's no business in tap water. No one's going to buy tap water from you. There is a lot of business in electrolyte powder, but only if you explain that plain water is insufficient to quench your thirst, which is exactly why the whole chronic dehydration thing has become a widely discussed condition or disorder or whatever. This same problem manufacturing structure shows up everywhere. Somebody has a 10-step skincare routine for skin that is absolutely fine. You have one blemish and you're, I'm rubbing all these creams on my face and all that shit. Supplements for deficiencies that you just don't have. There's sleep trackers for people, like I have my Oura Ring on. There's sleep trackers for people that get anxious about their sleep numbers, thusly interfering with their sleep. There's productivity software that basically makes people spend more time setting up the software than actually getting work done in it. You invent a problem, you make people conscious of the problem, you make sure that they have the problem. They know that they have the problem, or they think that they have the problem, and then you sell them the solution. Wow. Now, the fix to this issue, and it's mostly a question that you ask yourself, is who benefits from me believing that this is a problem? Specifically, who benefits from me thinking that I have this problem? If the answer is the person who is telling me that I have this problem, and if my dad or grandfather managed without it, I can usually survive by not fixing the problem. And this rule does not work. Always. This is not a rule, in fact. Because somebody can be selling you something and also be right. That's 100% true. But that sort of internal barometer can remove a lot of the bullshit. 100% true. Now, the second kind of issue is not necessarily manufactured. This is the second thing that most people get anxious about when they're on social media. And since it is not necessarily manufactured, this makes it a little bit more difficult to resolve. Newsflash, it's the news. Huh. God damn, I'm funny. The problem with the news is that it gives you problems that you cannot solve. They're very real problems that technically are not yours in an actionable sense. You don't have any control over these. A war on another continent, a policy fight in a legislature that you don't vote for. There's an economic trend measured in decades that says everybody's going to starve to death and die. Ha! Somebody can act on those things. It just so happens that it is not you. There's no action available to you today to change any of these catastrophic problems. Now, this differs from the electrolyte thing because nobody manufactures a war. There's nothing to see through, I guess. People can sort of play it up and make it seem like it's worse than it is, but there's no lie. It's all just like exaggeration, if that makes sense. The problem is real, and the reporting may be accurate. We don't know. But the harm comes between how urgent this problem is presented and how little you can actually do about it. Our bodies don't tend to handle this mismatch very well. Our bodies receive a threat signal, and it responds the way it responds. We get alert, there's stress hormones that happen, and then nothing happens because nothing can happen. You cannot do anything about this, right? It used to be, oh shit, there's a tiger, stress hormones, run away, no more tiger, stress hormones go down. Boom. But now you're seeing 30 fucking tigers in a day that you can't do anything about, and they're always there, and they're always kind of lurking in the back of your mind for several years. Not fantastic. Normally, stress that you can act on is tolerable because you can act on it. Oh, I'm so stressed that I have a public speaking engagement. I'm so stressed about it. Well, good. You can practice. You can prepare. And the more that you prepare, the less stressed you will be. Stress with nothing to do about it, stress that is completely out of your control, is corrosive. And social media tends to deliver unfixable problems to you all day. All day. It's an incredibly efficient machine to show you issues that you have zero control over. Now, the fix to this is definitely not stop caring about the world. You should care about it. You should vote. You should make a change. You should donate money. You should read a book on a subject, whatever. Do something. I'm not saying that you shouldn't care. But there is a difference between being informed and being alarmed. I can be informed about a thing and not have my fucking stress hormones go bing, 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 bing. Oh my God, I'm going to freak. There's a million tigers and I'm going to get eaten. Oh my God. Being alarmed about something that you have zero power over helps nobody. Since this problem is different than the commercial problem, obviously the fix is different as well. You cannot control geopolitical events. You cannot control the weather. You can't control when a volcano erupts. You can't control the government. What you can control is the dose of information and the format. Meaning, if you go from news all day, every day, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God, explosions, oh my God, famine, oh my God, hunger, oh my God, to a weekly long read on a subject, that gives you much more understanding than a bunch of daily fragments that produce alarm. A weekly long read gives you information, and it does not alarm you because you go, oh, okay. Oh, this is happening. Oh, well, that's not fantastic, but that's okay. Oh, whoa, that's wild. Oh, that's actually good. Oh, my goodness. Wow. If you change your dose, instead of little tiny daily, needles, to a weekly big one, or even just a weekly small one, who cares? It will generally make you less anxious. Or what I do is just watch the news less. Sue me about it. Sue me about it. When you are finished reading the news, watching the news, listening to the news, whatever you do, ask yourself, what am I going to do differently? What can I do about this? And if the honest answer is nothing, I cannot do anything, you were not informed about a problem. You have been alarmed. You have been alerted. You paid attention, and then you have received anxiety and stress in exchange. And most of the time, somebody gets paid for that transaction. Everything that I've said so far makes this big amorphous thing that social media is ruining your life sound like a time problem. I spend too much time watching the news. I spend too much time on my phone. I spend too much time on Instagram, on YouTube, whatever. If it were only a time problem, people probably would have solved it already. However, it's much more complex and nuanced than that for many reasons. The first that I'll give you, I'll give you a few here. The first one is that opting out of this system is pretty difficult, and it has actual social implications. If you're a established older individual, deleting Instagram probably doesn't cost you much, assuming that you don't use it for work, of course. Your friends text or email you, your job exists independent of it, everything is fine, delete that shit, you're good. If you're my age, if you're 20s, that's often not true. You receive humor through this app. Your friends send you stuff. You make plans through a group chat on this app. Invitations arrive as tagged posts. Half of your industry, whatever it is, does hiring through these apps. And being unfindable reads as weird or being unserious. So when people pose the solution of, well, just delete the app, you can definitely do that, but the cost is not zero. It's definitely not zero. There will be some social implications. Pretending otherwise is ignorant, truthfully. The most useful move that you can do here, the most useful move, is to separate your algorithm and all of that unconscious stimulation from your messaging and social. You say, hey guys, can we move this group chat to iMessage? How about that? Can we, text me or call me more often, whatever. Remove the social from the media. That was smart, what I just said. Remove the social from the media. You want the social, the media, This sounds like sort of elementary, rudimentary advice, but that's because it works. And, of course, if your work depends on you being on social media, then it's the conscious output that I talked about earlier on in this episode. You go on, answer some DMs, post a thing, and then that's it. You leave. There's almost no benefit to doom scrolling on Instagram. There just isn't. The second reason is that for specifically kids in my generation, but I feel that a lot of people, the algorithm is partly how you know who you are. Your algorithm continuously tells you what your group thinks, what your tribe thinks, what is funny this week, what you're supposed to find contemptible, what you're supposed to love, what you're supposed to hate, what you're supposed to want. It supplies a very, very simple answer to the amorphous question of who are you? What should you want? And why do you want that? And it does that so insidiously that you don't even notice, which is pretty fucking spooky, if I'm being real. If you take it away, the gap that exists there is not exactly boredom. Because a lot of people, they delete social media. I've done this before. You delete social media for a week, 2 weeks, whatever, and you go, damn, I'm really bored. Huh. It's not exactly boredom, although it feels very similar and it shares a lot of traits. A lot of people describe the first week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks as not knowing what to think about. You're not feeding your brain all of this stimulation. And that's an incredibly uncomfortable state. It's much more uncomfortable than being bored. And it's a common point where people reinstall their social media apps and whatever without being able to say why. Well, I was just bored. Not exactly. You didn't have enough stimulation or information coming into your brain in order to get those cogs going. And of course, this sort of hollow, not originating my own thoughts feeling is temporary, and it lasts somewhere around 3.5 weeks. The discomfort that you face when you delete these apps is not evidence that you made a mistake. It is what it feels like to go back to originating your own opinions and your own thoughts after such a long time of repetitively receiving them. You actually go back to doing intellectual output, or at least intellectual generation. So that's something. The third reason is that everything that you will replace social media with, everything that you would replace social media with, is much less stimulating. These algorithms stimulate your brain in under a second. You open up your app, something happens immediately. Oh my God, I just saw a guy jump off a building with a parachute. Wow. Right? Everything that you swap it for has a sort of stimulation delay on it. And it's not very enjoyable at the beginning. If you want to, I'm going to quit social media and I'm going to learn the guitar. Well, you're going to sound terrible for a month. I'm going to quit social media and I'm going to start going to the gym. Well, you're going to be very uncomfortable. You're going to be super sore and you're generally going to look the same. I'm going to quit social media and I'm going to start reading books. Books are boring for the first 20 pages and then you really get into it and you're like, ooh, fun. I want to quit social media and I want to start writing. If you're not a good writer, it's going to be embarrassing for like 6 months. You're going to be like, I don't want to show this to anybody. As opposed to, I open up my phone, press one thing, oh my God, this is so interesting and so stimulating. So, on day one of you quitting this thing that has actively ruined your life, the comparison is heavily weighted in favor of the thing that is ruining your life. You're putting the thing that rewards you instantly against a thing that rewards you in a few weeks or a few months or sometimes a few years. And generally, willpower is not really a variable here. It's just the fact that the stimulation schedule, the payoff schedule, the amount of dopamine that you receive is, they're just not even comparable, is the deal. So it's very useful to pick your time replacement strategy before you delete these apps. Boom. Now, does any of this actually work? Fair question. Very fair question. Here's what the research says. The best study on this was from a group of economists who paid about 1,600 people to deactivate their Facebook for 4 weeks, and then they measured what happened. Let me tell you what happened. It freed up about an hour in their day. And what people did with that hour is actually pretty interesting because they didn't move to other apps because in this study, they only disallowed Facebook. That was the standard prediction. They would stop going on Facebook and they would go on Instagram. They would stop going on Facebook and they would go on YouTube. They actually spent this brand new hour that they had unlocked offline. And they meaningfully shared this time with friends and family in person. Wow. Well-being improved. Life satisfaction went up about 1/10 of a standard deviation. Depression went down slightly less than that. Authors put it somewhere between 1/4 and 40% of the effect that you'd get from standard psychological treatment. And, of course, that's modest. 1/10 of a standard deviation is not that much. But it's real. Also, anybody telling you that screen time will transform your life, getting off your phone is going to transform your life, that's overselling it a little bit, or at least according to studies and data. However, a month after this study ended, the people who had taken a break from Facebook were using it about 23% less than the control group who didn't take a break from Facebook. So that little 4-week stint actually changed the habit, and it had stuck for a while without anybody enforcing it. Interesting. Second, being off the algorithms changed what they thought these algorithms were worth. Before getting off Facebook, the median person wanted about $100 to give up Facebook for 4 weeks. So that's basically them saying, I'd pay $25 a week for this. After actually getting off Facebook, their own valuations dropped by 14%. Again, not a crazy drop, but still, After taking a break from this thing, it is $14 less valued over a month. So they had been slightly overestimating what they were actually getting. So, my honest conclusion, my summary of this is that the effects are consistent in a direction. They are small to moderate in size and demonstrated over weeks rather than years. So, no study that I've found has shown that quitting social media fixes your life, right? What the evidence does support is a very, very narrow conclusion. You get an hour back of your day, generally. This is a pretty old study, but you get an hour back or more of your day, and you spend it with people rather than on a screen. You feel somewhat better, and the reduction in screen time partly happens on its own after a long enough time horizon. After about 3-4 weeks, you kind of start to reduce anyway. So, finally, we get to my favorite part, which is what can we do about this? We know that the problem is very big. The studies have demonstrated that the fix is a small to moderate increase in quality of life or whatever. Before I give you this fix, I would like to expand upon a nuance. Most everything that I've described up until this point has been a structural issue. It's been a structural problem. There's financial incentives, and there's a ranking system, and there's engineers, and there's companies who make jobs, or companies who make problems so that they can sell you a thing, and blah, 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 blah. And there's engineers their job is to keep you on this app, and blah, blah. However, this action list is not structural, obviously, because you're not a structure, you're an individual. This is a list of individual behavioral changes, which might sound like the wrong answer to a structural problem. Here is the resolution to this paradox. You cannot change the incentive. You cannot force companies to stop making problems. You cannot change Meta's business model. And you cannot wait until somebody regulates this in such a way that it won't be a problem anymore. What you can change is your exposure to it. What you can change is your action. And that is not the same as willpower. I don't like willpower. Willpower means having an argument every single night. I got to will this out of myself. I don't want to grab my phone, but it's right there. However, changing your exposure means having the argument once and then never having it again. You make the decision one time and now it's done. With that being said, here's what we can do to slowly but surely claw our way out of the hole that social media has put us in. 1, know what you want specifically enough to act on it. The second part is very important. Most people cannot tell you what they want with any sort of specificity at all. They normally name a mood. I'd like to be successful. I'd like to be in shape. I'd like to be happy. If you compare somebody saying, I want to be in shape, with somebody saying, I want to deadlift 4 plates and I want to be under 15% body fat by next June. One tells you what to do. I want to deadlift 400 plates. Okay, then I better start fucking deadlifting. I want to be under 15% body fat. I better start getting my diet in place. Cool. The other one, I want to be in shape, only gives you something to feel bad about. Because you go, I want to be in shape, but I'm not in shape. Shit. That sucks. Someone with a clear target, meaning someone with a clearly defined vision, is not fighting their phone every night. They truly have something that they'd rather be doing. So, figure out exactly what you want specifically enough to act on it. Second, add friction to your screen usage. Take your phone out of your bedroom at night. Put it in the kitchen. Put it in the fucking garage. Put it wherever. This single change is more effective than any app or strategy that I've ever tried because it removes the 2 worst windows for screen sucking: the hour before you sleep and the first half hour before waking. If you have a problem waking up on time, buy an alarm clock. My wife bought me an alarm clock. It's awesome. Turn all your notifications off. All of them. Do not disturb forever. Unless you have like keep your fucking manager or your mom off of do not disturb because, you got to talk to mom and manager. But all of them. Not only the ones that you've decided are unimportant, all of them. Unless it's messages or calls or whatever. Basically, every single notification is another company or another person trying to decide when you do shit or when you think about their shit. Not good. Delete the apps that you cannot use in moderation. Of course, if you need Instagram or YouTube or TikTok or whatever the fuck for work, use it for output, not input. Adding friction helps way more than your intention because what you do at night is mostly determined by what is in reach. If you put a book where your phone was and your phone is in the fucking neighbor's pool, you're probably not going to go, oh, I want to doom scroll so bad, dude. I'm going to go jump in my neighbor's pool. You're probably going to pick up that book and get slightly interested. It's better than nothing. Number 3, pick what goes in that gap before you actually create that gap. This is the time replacement thing that I just talked about. You replace exactly where your phone was on your bedside table or on your whatever the fuck with a book or with a notepad or with a something, right? And you should expect it to be much less fun than the algorithm for at least the first few weeks. And I would not evaluate your time replacement strategy until at least 30 days, because that's when you're going to get the full sort of detox from your algorithmic subjugation. And then you can actually start to enjoy books or enjoy writing or enjoy, whatever it is that you're doing. I like my thing to be analog. I like to be able to touch and feel it. I'm not a meditation guy. I don't do that. I like to write or read. Cool, whatever. Number 4, treat your attention as something that you are training, not just something that you are protecting. Everything up to here has sort of treated your attention as if it is a fixed quantity. It is a commodity that has X number of units and it gets stolen. That's an incomplete definition. Your attention is also a skill. It can be morphed, so to speak. Years of fragmented input and constant stimulation makes prolonged focus harder. And sustained practice at prolonged focus makes it easier again. Your attention span, that's why they call it a span, because it can span up and it can span closed. Wow, who would have thunk? Cutting your screen time doesn't automatically make you a genius that you can focus in on these little microscopic problems for hours. It doesn't automatically hand you the ability to read for an hour. You have to rebuild that from the ground up. If you think about it, you've been looking at these little tiny pieces of micro content for years, probably. For fucking years. And now all of a sudden you want to pick up a book? Are you crazy, dude? Read words on a page? No way. So to begin, read for a few minutes. Or work on something difficult without being distracted. Have a conversation that goes past the point where you'd normally pull out your phone and start doing that. It's going to be uncomfortable, at least for a couple of weeks, but soon it won't be, and you will change your fucking life. Now, with this frame, you can end up with more attention than you started with. This is so important. Almost nobody around you will have your attention span if you just do this for a few weeks. You're going to be a genius. You're going to be such an active listener, dude. Such an active listener. 5, sort everything into 2 piles. This is a pillar. This is a load-bearing part. This is the cornerstone of Stoicism. It's a very old strategy, but it fucking works. Sort everything into these 2 piles. The things that you can control and the things that you cannot control. The ones that you do not have control over are normally the weather, unless you're Zeus, the economy, unless you're an economist or you're in the government, the algorithm, unless you are Mark Zuckerberg, or other people's opinions. Complaining about any of that produces nothing. It changes nothing. However, what you do have control over is what you do today, what you eat, whether or not you go to the gym, how you talk to people, specifically the people that you love, what you're working towards, where your attention goes. When something in this pile is broken or is not working, complaining is worse than useless because you're the only person who can fix it. And you're spending time describing the problem to people who cannot fix it. Just fix it, dude. Come on. What are we doing? This is what I'll leave you with right now. We'll go back to the very beginning. Try to remember what you did last February. Try to remember what you did last year. A year from now, you'll try to remember this month. And one of two things will be true. Either you will remember working towards something and really changing your life for the better, not completely, metamorphosizing, but at least a small incremental change towards your ideal future. You remove your phone, you start reading, you get a little smarter, you practice the guitar, oh my God, whatever. Or you won't. You either will or you will not. How we spend our days is, of course, how we spend our lives. Ladies and gentlemen, I am your handsome, slightly sweaty host, Justin Butcher. This has been the Extraordinary Life Podcast. I hope you enjoyed. I will see you again next week for another episode. Bye-bye for now.